Welcome to the Bitchin' Siblings Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Bitchin' Siblings Podcast. This is Amy.
And I'm Ginny.
And this week, my topic that I brought to the table is daylight savings time.
Amy apparently has some feelings about this.
I do. I'm tired of it. It's bullshit. The state of California voted, and it passed that we would no longer take part in daylight savings time, yet that was 3 years ago. We're still doing it. Why?
I was actually reading up on this the other day because a girlfriend of mine was trying to convince me that we weren't doing daylight savings this year. And I said, no, we're still doing daylight savings because our state also, I think, either has debated it or made a decision. I'm not sure. Pretty much what it came down to, though, was that the state was waiting for some sort of federal thing that needed to happen so that this. Pretty much what it came down to was that there are certain things have to be in order for it to be able to take place, and that has yet to happen. I don't remember what those things are. I just remember reading it going, many states have passed resolutions to abolish recognizing daylight savings, but each state, one is different because each state, has the right to govern how they want. And so each state has different guidelines that need to be met for them to be able to start recognizing it or not.
And that I can't tell you, but I'm going to give us a little background about why it started. Okay? So I did research, by the way. I did.
She's not just pulling it out of her ass.
I really did
everybody.
not. So daylight savings time policy began in Germany in 1916. And they did it in hopes that it would save energy during World War I, so they could utilize natural daylight.
Right.
That makes sense. That's fine. Whatever. They were not the first people to think of it. Apparently, there was a guy in the UK. He thought it was very sad that there was a lot of unused daylight before we even woke up. And so he had been bringing this to the government in the UK, and they kept shutting him down. And this was in 1915. And then Germany utilized it in 1916. And then in the US, we took it into, put it into effect as of March 19th, 1918, for the same fuel-saving reasons, using natural daylight. Mm-hmm. Again, makes sense back then. Makes total sense. And then sports and recreation industries saw it too, and they said golf balls sales skyrocketed during daylight saving time. And baseball is a huge early supporter too, because there's no artificial illumination at parks. So to get school kids and workers to ball games with extended daylight, they have to start later. And this is a direct quote from this article that I found. And then a lot of people were saying that it was also a good health policy as well, given that the people had extra time to be outdoors. The first people that went against daylight savings were actually farmers. So
interesting.
Yeah. Oh, they also said the movie industry was against it as well, because people were less likely to go into a dark theater when it was bright outside. But the farmers advocating for daylight savings is a common myth. In fact, daylight savings meant that they had less time in the morning to get their mill and harvested crops to market. So, and some said they warned it that it was taking us off of God's time. That was a direct quote from them. And it was so unpopular when they experimented with daylight savings time during World War I that before the Versailles Treaty is signed at the end of World War II, Congress is forced to sign a repeal to quell the revolt from the farm lobby and its potent lobby. So they then brought it back in 1942 for the duration of World War II. But in New York City, they continued to observe metropolitan daylight savings time because the city's position as a financial capital, and then other cities followed. But the rural areas around there did not follow daylight savings time. So there were cities right next to each other that were not on the same time. So in 1966, the confusion was bad enough to prompt the Uniform Time Act, signed by Lyndon Johnson. The first peacetime daylight savings law said that the U.S. policy would be to observe 6 months of daylight savings and 6 months of standard, and it required states to either adopt daylight savings entirely or opt out, avoiding patchwork of cities and counties that had been so problematic. For example, Arizona opted out because an extra hour of daylight in the summer doesn't make sense when it's over 100 degrees already. So, why the fuck isn't California doing it? Anyways.
Because not all of California is at 100 degrees in the summer.
Well, it's...
Because you guys do have a fairly large state that goes very north-south. I mean, if you were only talking about Southern California, I could see your point.
Okay, but I live in Northern California, and it gets to the triple digits every single summer for, like, 2 months straight.
Well, yeah. But...
Just saying. But in 1973, shortly after the oil embargo went into effect, Richard Nixon called for a year-round daylight savings time. A brief trial that ended partly because of the fears that children would get hit by cars in the dark. But daylight savings has nevertheless grown. In 1986, the U.S. started observing 7 months of it, an extra month that the golf industry and manufacturers of barbecue equipment claimed was worth between $200 and $400 million. They made that much extra because of daylight savings, is what they claimed. So go capitalism. Since then, since 2005, the U.S. has been observing 8 months of daylight savings time. And by now, the original stated purpose of the idea of saving energy has been called into question. So, while I understand the point during World War times, it no longer makes sense. This whole idea that we're gaining an hour of daylight, we're not. We're just gaining... You're just changing what time it is. You're still going to have the same amount of daylight each day, regardless of what time it is.
Right.
So that was, by the way, that was our little educational of where daylight saving started.
I mean, I've always been impartial to daylight savings. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't enjoy losing an hour of sleep. I do genuinely look forward to falling back just because you do gain the extra hour of sleep. But I personally don't see any benefits from it. Personally, I can see how certain industries could find some beneficial reasons for wanting to keep it. I think that where we're at technologically in our world now, that is not a good enough of an argument to maintain practicing daylight savings. And as a parent, daylight savings, whether you're falling back or springing forward, is very difficult. Children's circadian rhythm is not ever going to acknowledge, daylight savings, and it's a lot harder on them. They're growing so quickly and everything that messing with their sleep schedules is just, it's difficult.
Well, and for those people without children, those people instead with animals don't give a fuck what time the clock says. It's been X amount of time since you were fed last. This is when I'm getting fed, or I'm going to scratch your eyeballs out.
Well, see, and mine doesn't worry about being fed, but perfect example. Usually when I get up out of bed in the morning, she used to jump up right away. Now she's kind of gotten to that point where she knows I get up and I take a shower. So she still lays in bed. And then by the time I get out of the shower, she knows it's time to get up and start moving around. I did not get up and take a shower this morning, but my husband did because he had to work. And normally by the time he gets up, if he's leaving and he opens our bedroom door, she's up and jumping down because she knows she gets to go outside to go potty. And this morning she just was not having it. She's like, nope, not time to get up. Like, she was just passed out. Like, we had to come on, get out of bed. Like, and so food wise, she's not even worried about it, but just her sleep schedule is thrown off.
Yeah.
In her mind, it's not time to get up yet.
And here's the thing. I because I'm right there with you. I don't see a benefit in either direction.
Mm-hmm.
There's to me in my brain, we just pick one of the times. I don't fucking care which time we pick, and we stick with it. Split it down the middle. Let's change it by a half hour, and then we're done. I don't care. Just figure it out. I don't like the time change. I don't care what it's doing outside. I don't care what the weather is. The weather's not going to determine what time I have to go to work because time is a human construct in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
The summer before I got married, I worked graveyard shift. It doesn't matter. I just tell myself, okay, I need to be at work at this time to this time, and it doesn't matter what the outside is doing. It does not matter where the sun is at in the sky. It does not matter.
Well, and I think it, depending on what your job is, you just get used to your routine, whatever time it may be. Your body is set to a routine based off of your lifestyle. The government changing the time every 6 months for a antiquated reason does not affect your job and your routine except for fucking up your sleep schedule.
Exactly.
So like it's yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, would have no problem if we never followed it again. If we keep following it, it's whatever. It's obnoxious. My kids are much older now. I don't have to deal with that. I myself am the only one that has to deal with it, but I just happen to know that I go to bed an hour earlier, or I'll go lay down and relax an hour earlier just because I know, you know, it's going to be a little different. It takes a couple days. It's obnoxious. I don't like it, but I'm not one of these people that's going to go out and get people to sign petitions and be like, get rid of the time change. Like, you know.
See, and I'm not going to go out and like sign petitions, but at the same time,
yeah,
I did vote on the getting rid of changing the time. I don't remember if it's standard time that they're trying to go to or daylight savings. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really
I
care.
think it was standard.
Just let's
pick a time.
Yeah,
and stick
exactly.
with it.
And that's really what it boils down to for me. But it's frustrating because some part of the year we're the same time zone as Arizona, and some part we aren't because
right.
they don't change their time. And that is the only reason I want to live in Arizona.
Well, yeah, and that's, I know, like, when I used to have to call stores about their clock in and clock outs, we always try to hit, like, our eastern stores and then our centrals and then our mountains and our Pacifics. We do have a store in Alaska, so that one's, like, way different, but our Arizona stores get really obnoxious around this time of year because you get used to them being on a certain time frame, i.e. mountain and or Pacific, and then it changes, and then when you call them and you're like, why aren't they in? And you have to try to remember, okay, wait a minute, because you have to remember which stores where, you know, like we just did, you know, daylight savings or whatever, and so that was obnoxious because it constantly changed every 6 months where nobody else's time, you know, nobody else, you know, our East Coast stores were always our East Coast stores, you know, that never changed.
Yep.
So it definitely is weird. And I also live hour and a half away from Mountain Time. So I'm in the state that observes, half of our state observes Mountain Time and the other half observes Central Time.
I'd like to see that map because Chris is on the same time zone as you, but he's, I feel like, more than an hour and a half away.
No, because he's about 2 hours away, but it's because he's like southwest. So you have to go south and then west and south, you know?
Okay.
So like he is in the same time zone as me, but it's not far from where he's at that you go into Mountain Time. Like it's pretty close to that area because my other girlfriend, my maid of honor, lives in a town and she's an hour behind.
So you and your friend are in 2 different time zones.
Yes.
So let's talk about that real quick.
Because it's an hour. Okay, so from where our brother lives to where my girlfriend lives, she's 88 miles to the northwest from our brother.
Can you show me a picture in your screen real quick? Does it show the actual line?
I can show you.
Okay.
Just 1 second. So, Central, just a second. I have to Google this and type in the right stuff.
Because the other thing I'm going to want to touch on in this is time zones.
You see this map?
Absolutely not. All I see is white. No, it's literally just a white blob.
I know, I'm trying to...
It's too bright.
Okay. So, can you see me from here? Or is it still just a bright
It's just
screen?
bright. Don't worry about it. I'll look it up later.
So there's my county, and then there's 2 more counties to the west, and then the third county is a different time zone. There are 2 counties separating my county and Mountain Time Zone.
Okay, so if you're on Highway 80,
yes,
what city are you going through when that changes? Or
you would be going
approximate city?
through, let me find city-wise, because I'm llooking at, like, you would be
Is it
going
like Sydney?
through, no, that's all the way. You would be going through Ogallala area.
I'm sorry. I hear that and I think Washington. I don't know why.
Because of, what's that?
Olala?
Olala, thank you. Olala, Washington. Yeah.
I don't know why, but Ogallala. I get those 2 things confused.
So it goes like Sydney, Big Springs, Ogallala, North Platte.
Okay.
So it's and Ogallala is kind of where, if I'm headed west, Ogallala is where you split to either go up north towards, like, if we were to head towards Washington, or you could go south into Colorado. So, like, at Ogallala is where you pretty much move, and you either stay on I-80 and head towards Washington, or you drop down and go to I-70 into Denver.
Got it.
So, like, it's right there at that split where you can go so Chris is not that far from the timeline. He's 88 miles away because he's a lot further south than her, but, like, if you were to put them up next to each other, they would be maybe 20-30 minutes away.
Okay. So I mean, I understand the fact that time zones exist to utilize the most daylight time as possible, but why can't certain places just have different their sunlight be during different hours? Why?
I don't know.
I didn't do that research. I didn't do, like, because I have a feeling they're just going to say, it's to make it more uniform that daylight time is during these hours. That's not a good enough reason, man. Because time is a construct. I just don't understand why, if daylight time is during 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. or whatever, make that the work hours or what. I don't know, but, like,
yeah. Let me see here, just 1 second.
Because I know that, like, throughout the world, it's not just the U.S. that uses time zones. The entire world uses time zones.
Well, when we were in Israel, we were 8 hours ahead. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like everybody uses it.
Yeah.
Get this, because of how the Earth is tilted and who's facing the sun. Easter is in the fall.
Yeah.
In the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, like Christmas is in the summer.
Yeah.
In Australia.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
I was reading a book recently, and they were talking about Easter and it being fall, and I was like, wait, what? Oh yeah, they're in Sydney. And it made more sense, but, like, it's one of those things that your brain does not want to comprehend that.
Well, and I think until you go to a place that's that drastic of a time difference, it's hard to really, like, put your finger on it. It is very, very strange when we were in Israel that it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and that's pretty much the only time. I mean, if I didn't call the kids before 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, then I wasn't getting a hold of them because it was midnight here. I'm waking up and they're just going to bed pretty much. 6 o'clock in the morning there, when we were getting up, 6, 7 o'clock is,
So let me ask you this. Do you like having a clock that tells you when to do things?
What do you mean?
So the fact that...
Like an alarm?
Not an alarm. Not an alarm. A clock saying, okay, it's 10 o'clock. You work from 8 to 2. Do you think as humans we would be able to self-regulate if we weren't so fucking stupid as a species? Okay, these are the daylight hours. This is what I need to do during these daylight hours.
I personally don't, but I do know that there are some people that really do thrive on having that sort of structure and definitive timeline. You know, I personally don't need it.
I just feel like cave people didn't have watches. They didn't have wall clocks telling them anything. They were like, oh, the sun is up, I should be up too. But even then, so here's something else. I learned this recently. Everybody has their own internal clock. Some people are actually meant to be awake at night because humans as a species, they would take like rotating shifts as to who would protect while other people were sleeping.
Yeah.
My protection time, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's it. That's the only time you're going to get good, useful, honest work out of me. But I wouldn't know what time of the day it was if we didn't have clocks, and I'd be just like, okay, so a couple hours after the sun comes up, I take over. But then again, I wouldn't know what an hour is.
Well, so now you're just talking about the whole perception of time as a whole, not just daylight savings.
But time is stupid. Time is stupid. So daylight savings is stupid because time is stupid. Am I wrong?
I feel like I get what you're saying, but I do think that as a species, we do need that stability. And I'm sure back in the cave times, Neanderthal days, or whatever you want to talk about, they had their own way of measuring,
where the sun was at,
from the time that they got up to the time that they went to bed. But again, like you're saying, some people's natural body clocks get up in the evening. And so I think that as a species, we do benefit from having something solid and definitive to tell us exactly what moment of the day we're in. But based off of your own internal clock, it'll depend on how it affects you. Like I think that as a whole, we need that stability. I don't know that not having that would be beneficial, especially with this much technology going on.
Okay. So that said, I would like to return my subscription to humanity, and I want to go live with the animals. And I just want to be like, okay, I'm going to go hunt and gather with this daylight that I have during my brain functioning time. And I don't want to know what time the clock says it is. Yeah. I just want to be.
I mean, I get what you're saying. I do. I think that your frustration is probably more focused on the capitalist way our world is run now, in the sense that, time is no longer about being enjoyed. It's about as much productivity as possible. And so time seems more of a punishment than it is just
structure,
going about your day and doing what you need. Yeah. And just structure and doing what you need to do and having a specific time and place for things. It's difficult when you have to count down hours for work, or, I only get this many hours of sleep, or, because you're so busy planning the rest of your time. I think you're more affected by that than time itself. It's the society we live in that puts so much focus on being productive and multitasking and using the best of your time and making people feel like they're lazy if they're not being productive every moment of every day that there's sunlight,
I think you got me there. But at the same time, I still want to just go out in the mountains. Be done. Get rid of clocks.
I mean, I would too, as long as I could still have technology and stuff, because I don't want to go off the grid. So did you do any research then on why your state has not
I did not, because
adopted following?
unfortunately, I forgot to pick a topic until late. So I didn't get as much research done as I would have liked. I actually did believe that at one point it was the farmers that,
It had to do with harvest.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's not the case. It was literally fuel conservation in the world wars, which makes sense, but at the same time, again, it doesn't change how much daylight we actually have during the day.
Correct.
It just changes what time
It just changes
the clock says
the time
it is.
the daylight comes. Yeah.
So I just don't understand why we wouldn't be able to to me, it makes more sense to slowly adjust your body to the circadian rhythm of, oh, the sun's coming up, I should be up. Because if you do it based on the sunrise, you are doing it slowly, which makes more sense.
And nowadays you have blackout curtains and you have, artificial sun night lights and alarm clocks that slowly wake you up to that. So like if you needed to adjust what daylight looked for you based off of your job or whatever, there are, albeit maybe not as effective ways as natural, but there are artificial ways to create sunlight and or darkness depending on what time of day you need. So, back then I could understand, because they didn't have those options and needing to be in daylight during combat was necessary. But again, like you're saying, like you just start later.
Yeah, just like let the sun tell you when to go to battle.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just, to me, it just seems, it doesn't make sense in my head. It just doesn't.
It did at one point. It no longer does. And I don't think it serves enough of a purpose that it's necessary to keep.
I agree. 1,000% agree. So, yeah.
Well, there's that.
So, Amy thinks that time is stupid and that, we should get rid of it.
But I mean, I feel like that's a whole other podcast.
I don't know that there's much to go off of other than it's a human construct and I'm done with it. That's the long and short of it.
And I think what I'm getting out of that is Amy says she's not human. She wants to go live with the animals in the mountains because of a human construct.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I want to live in a cave. I want to go hibernate with a bear too.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
No.
So this is going to be a different podcast, but things you learned later on in life that you thought were true or that you thought were different. Bears don't go in and sleep all winter. But I want to hibernate.
What do they do, Amy?
So they get up and they come out, or they'll get up and wake up and move around in their den or whatever, but they're not asleep the whole time. And I always thought or assumed or was taught, I'm not sure, that they went in and they slept all winter. But they don't sleep all winter. They come out, they move around, they get up and stretch their bodies.
I think where you're probably getting that concept is that we were taught that bears do hibernate all winter. I think hibernate for me doesn't necessarily mean sleeping. It means when they're getting ready for winter and they're getting ready for hibernation, they're stockpiling food and eating a whole bunch because there's less available during winter. So they expend less energy by not hunting and not moving around as much to preserve the fat that they've added on over the summer. So to me, hibernation almost means like their body not shuts down, but definitely slows down processes that burn energy so that they can last all winter with less food.
Yeah. Well, that's not what I thought as a child.
But what you got it as, they went in their den and slept all. And I think a lot of that also has to do with just the times and the media, that's what we saw in movies.
And that's also I feel like even if we did misunderstand it, they didn't correct us.
No.
So.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So.
Why would they do that?
But yeah.
That was 30 years ago.
Yeah. Who the fuck cares about these kids learning shit
Right.
and learning it correctly.
These 80s babies. Who gives a fuck, right?
Yeah, that's just an experimental generation anyway, apparently.
We're probably, I think, one of the best generations.
Absolutely. A personal opinion.
That's just me.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add about time?
No, I mean, I absolutely get where you're coming from. I absolutely understand why it was adopted and why maybe it hasn't been repealed. I get now why certain people are asking for that to be something that is revisited. I also think it is absolutely ridiculous that our government paid employees that are elected into office even have to argue about it and anything on the floor, that it should just be like a freaking unanimous like decision. I don't understand the whole defense of it or like disagreement on it.
Yeah.
But again, I'm also not there, so I'm not hearing some of the things they say. So I'm impartial both ways. Like, I don't mind if it stays. I would definitely not be mad if it left. But I do think it is a poor waste of our taxpayers' dollars to be paying senators and representatives to be debating whether or not we should keep time change or not. I think it's, if you had enough scientific evidence to prove that it really doesn't do anything beneficial, then why even? It should just be like a unanimous, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Again, I understand that it was an act that was created, so there are certain things you have to do to be able to repeal that. I don't know that there should be any debate on it.
Exactly. I agree. I agree.
I mean, whatever. So that's it for me.
Reach out to us. Tell us your thoughts on time changing, time zones, hemisphere changing.
Whether or not you want to hibernate like a bear for 6 months like Amy does.
Absolutely.
And cuddle with the bear.
Absolutely. Email us those things, Ginny and Amy podcast at gmail.com. That's GINNYANDAMY podcast at gmail.com.
You can also find us on Bitching Siblings on Instagram. I check it, send all those little pretty pictures. If you haven't checked it out yet, you should. There's a cute little video of Amy and her little rascal pigtail thingy in the front of her hair from last week. So check that out.
Bye.
Bye.